Being 7 p.m., I'd like to call the August 8th, 2018 board meeting, the Lisle Library District to order. Roll call, please.
Marjorie Bartelli.
Here.
Steve Fisher.
Here.
Richard Flint.
Here.
Thomas Hummel.
Here.
Liz Sullivan.
Here.
Emily Swistek.
Here.
Juan Marie Wang.
Here.
Quorum being present. Item 2 on the agenda is opportunity for visitors to speak. Any visitors in the room wish to address the board, they will have 5 minutes to address the board on any topic, and if they could please use the microphone. Would anybody present? Sir?
President Fisher, thank you for the opportunity to address the board today. From what I recall, last year's tentative B&A approval process was fairly contentious. I'd like to think that this year should be a little bit less so, since the draft B&A suggests that Trustee Sullivan is getting the additional taxpayer money for use by trustees on dues, meetings, conferences, and training that she'd asked for last year. She had asked for $2,250 additional dollars for the trustees' use last year. Hopefully she isn't too disappointed that the tentative budget only allocates an additional $1,500. I was sorry, though, to see that it will be at the expense of an identical decrease in the funds budgeted for dues, meetings, conferences, and training for library staff. Without wishing to offend you or your colleagues, I would suggest that most library patrons will probably more directly benefit from the library's investments in its staff than in its trustees. And I do want to point out also that the same voices asking the library to double the taxpayer money that is spent on trustees are simultaneously proposing stingy, parsimonious behavior with the library staff, objecting to holiday pay for library employees, for example, or asking why newly hired employees weren't replaced with volunteers instead. Now, I don't know who that person was, but I can think of very few things more demoralizing than starting a new job and learning that at a public meeting with my colleagues and the public present, that one of the people who ran the place had asked, why did we hire this person? Why couldn't we have gotten someone to do it for free instead? I would like to also reiterate my support as a taxpayer for the Special Reserve Fund. As discussions in these meetings and the strategic planning process have revealed, there's a definite need for investment in the library's facilities, elevators, air conditioning. And in anticipation of the completion of the strategic plan and a revised, updated ordinance reauthorizing the Special Reserve Fund in accordance with the goals of that strategic plan, I believe this is an appropriate mechanism for saving money for future investment in the library's facilities. I'm hoping, however, that the decision to not levy the 0.02% building and maintenance tax will be discussed and explained here, both for the benefit of the board and the public. I recall from previous meetings that was described by the director and others here as a useful way to specifically fund physical facility improvements, and I'm curious why this mechanism isn't being used this time around. Thank you for your time.
Anyone else wish to address the board?
Well, I'm not quite as learned as my predecessor, but and I'm not an accountant, I don't profess to be one, but I do have a few questions, and I realize that I won't get answers, but perhaps sometime after the meeting, somebody can educate me. With respect to the fiscal budget, does the employee increase, the budget for fiscal 17, 18, and 19 reflect any changes in personnel? Is the SEG assistant plan a new item on the employee cost? What caused the dramatic increase in the D-based internet license cost? That was astounding. It seems like an awful large increase, and I'm just curious as to why. I have no idea what an HSA salary is in the title. I don't know what that acronym HSA means, so perhaps somebody can educate me on that after the meeting. Is there a designated member that goes to all the Chamber of Commerce meetings? I didn't know if that was true or not. That's all I have, and once again, I understand I won't get an answer, but perhaps afterwards we can talk about it. Thank you.
Could you repeat your second statement?
Oh, the psych assistance program.
Oh, ComPsych.
ComPsych, yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else in attendance wish to address the board?
I guess I got my big mouth. Chris Sheltoff. I was here 13 years ago. I've just recovered. But obviously there was a lot more going on that I've just been ignorant about, and it's my own fault. But having listened to those two things, I'm going to probably be pigeon buttholing Jana and Chris and find out what's going on. I am not disabled at all. However, if I were, I'd be really pissed about the elevator situation because that's going on for a long time and there's really no reason why. I do notice, I'm in this library probably, at least 5 days a week, would you say? You know?
Yeah.
At least, yes, sometimes twice. I take out a lot of books. There's fewer people here. There's fewer people that do the shelving of the books, the putting things on hold and notifying the system. 7 o'clock in the morning, I get the texts and I get the email, 7:01. But fewer people. Where are all the people going? So that's what I'm going to be investigating, and I don't think I'd be smiling if I were you. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to address the board? Right, seeing none, we'll move on to item 3, the consent agenda. Does anyone have any changes to the consent agenda? Hearing none, does anyone want to make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
There is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there discussion on the motion? All right, hearing none. Roll call, please, sir.
Emily Swistek.
Aye.
Lauren Ray White.
Aye.
Marjorie Bartelli.
Aye.
Richard Flint.
Aye.
Thomas Hummel.
Aye.
Liz Sullivan.
Aye.
Vote is 6 to 0. The consent agenda is approved. Item 4 on the agenda is the director's report. Director Weinstein.
Hi. I will start with, last month we had a member of the public who made a comment about the special reserve line in the treasurer's report, so I do have somewhat of an answer there. In some, it was indeed a clerical error, in that there was no footnote to indicate our report was modified to match the official audit of funds. The curious thing was that the amount has always shown an approximate $200,000 discrepancy between the treasurer's report and the final audit for many years, so almost 10 years. The audit number being higher, important to note. We believe this happened around the same time that the library actually used the funds for capital projects back in 2008. So our financial director is looking into this with our auditors as well as with our financial vendor. She's got an explanation of what she's found so far. Ginger.
Okay, so an adjustment was made to the beginning balance of the special reserve fund by $229,000 back in November of 2017. To have it tied to the balance in our official audit as of 6/30/2017. The special reserve fund line in the treasurer report has been off approximately $200,000 since 2008-2009. I have compared the treasurer's report for June 30th of each year to the official audit of that same year. Just a reminder that the treasurer's report is a fluctuating document where money goes in and out before and after publishing the report. I've requested the audit entries for 2008 and 2009 from our auditors, Canuti, and I am retracing them in the system. But unfortunately, back in 2008, the accounting software had numeric gaps in the journal entry, and this was due, we were thinking, to an upgrade at that time or ongoing glitches within the system. I have opened a case with Blackbaud, our accounting software, but there is no timetable as to when it will be resolved. The good news is that our audited numbers are our true numbers, and we have remedied the treasurer's report to reflect that. As soon as we can pinpoint the date and the issue from 10 years ago, we will release a concrete statement about the actual thing that happened.
So just kind of be clear, I mean, what is this? I mean, it's what is basically saying that our audit report is correct,
Yeah.
but there was a mistaken journal entry back in 2007, 2008 with not cost. So that particular entry really just carried over through the last 10 years, and we never really went back and correct them.
And that's because we haven't really, I imagine the reason it wasn't caught was that we really haven't expended large amounts of funds from our special reserves since that time. So this amount just carried and carried.
But at
and
the same
carried.
time, that's the reason why we have audit firm to help us to make sure, our financial records are in sync and be able to provide audit opinion. So at that time, back in 2007, 2008, they still give us unqualified, opinion for our financial statements, right? So, they will have to come back to say what they have missed as part of their audit.
Well, I don't
It
really
wasn't
think-
the audit.
Oh, it was
Yeah.
just.
It was the treasurer's report. So this is like a board document, and that's the point. Our audited numbers are fine. Our receipts are fine, our reports are fine.
Yeah, I'm just saying part of the audit scope, does that ensure that we'll have correct journal entry into our accounting, into our books? Is that part of the scope of the audit?
Yes, but I'm not even sure we used Canuti back then. So do you know who we used?
I think that we did use Canadian
Okay.
back then, but like the treasurer's report is an internal document that we provide to the board. They don't even look at it, our treasurer's report.
But she's talking about the journal
Is that a
entries. in
journal
the-
entry or just a clerical kind of a
think-
typing error when we actually generate report? There's two different
don't
things,
know.
right?
We were trying to
So
figure it out,
that's-
yeah.
That's where we're missing the gaps in the
Mhm.
accounting system, where we can't. I guess back, because this was before I came, so back in 2008, 2009, I think to save space on the server, they used to just like close out the year. So then basically now it just has a beginning balance and an ending balance, and you can't retrace the detail.
We'll see. We don't know. We're guessing. Okay, so that's an answer to that public comment from last month. Moving on, the library had a really nice summer read wrap-up party on Saturday, July 28th. We had a steady stream of people during the 3-hour event. We had approximately 428 patrons come for the ice cream, music, crafts, and the very popular obstacle course. And we might just have to have that every year now because we had so many people going in and out of it. I know I had a trustee try it out.
Did you?
I did.
Yeah. So in total, we had about 1,426 people participate in the summer read this year. In the packet, I provided the top 5 most popular books, and they're also plastered outside in the foyer. I'll name the number ones. For adults, it was The President is Missing by James Patterson, of course, and Bill Clinton. The Book Thief by Mark Zusak for teens was the top book. And then for the kids did something special this year, and they've been doing it for the past few years, is that they're logging their reading minutes. And ended up logging almost 600,000 minutes this year. I know that was a big jump from last year. And then the top book for kids this year was Short by Holly Sloan. But I have to mention also that Harry Potter also made an appearance twice on their list, so very popular still. President Fisher and I attended the intergovernmental meeting on July 19th, and then, let's see, 5 different other government bodies attended. The Park District mentioned that they have their summer concert series happening. On August 8th, the Lisle Community Night is happening, and then the library will also be in attendance at that event. The Park District is also looking to use universal design principles when updating their playgrounds, and they're also looking to use natural pesticides on their grounds. And the Fire District is expected to be fully accredited in the spring of 2019. They also have a new website, and they're planning a September 11th memorial event at the fire station featuring artifacts from the sites on 9/11. And then the Convention and Visitors Bureau has a new visitor's guide out, and actually the library is within that visitor's guide. And they also have an accordion festival booked at the Hyatt. Very unique event. District 203 is remodeling 4 of their school libraries, and they also have some HVAC repairs happening. What they're doing with their libraries is they're increasing their group study rooms and then improving their seating throughout. And they also have some sports state championships that they're very proud of. And then District 202, they've broken ground for their new elementary school. There's artist renderings on their website, and they're also preparing for a possible referendum regarding funding. Okay, we just received our per capita grant funds, very happy, and to the amount of $35,000 and some change. Last year, the funds came pretty late in the fiscal year. They came in May, So we just got ours now. We're always happy to receive these funds because they are never guaranteed. And we use the funds in order to meet the standards in the Illinois Standards for Illinois Public Libraries book, and under the following categories of technology, marketing, programs, equipment, and materials. And these funds are deposited into our corporate fund. So this year, we plan to increase our digital content, satisfying holds on popular digital materials, as well as broadening the variety of those materials. These funds will also allow us to purchase a ticketing program for technology issues, as well as fund our increasingly popular library-wide programs like our Harry Potter Day event last year. And then in the marketing and awareness category, we've identified via strategic planning that we need to put forth some more effort there. So we're looking at some targeted promotion towards families, towards people without families, people without children, as well as larger community-wide advertising of our resources. Okay, moving on, I also want to mention that the Illinois Art Education Association has afforded us the honor of displaying 45 framed art pieces from kindergarten through 12th graders. Children from across Illinois submitted pieces to the IAEA for a competition, and the award winners are touring the state, and they're all upstairs in youth services. So we have the 45 pieces up there through August, and I highly recommend you go upstairs and visit. They're really exceptional pieces. They're beautiful. And we also will be closed this Friday for an all-day in-service day for staff development. On our agenda, we have harassment training. We have a Lisle history lesson as provided by the Lisle Heritage Society. We have a diversity and inclusion training program. We're going to be doing our emergency drills, and then we'll have a team building experience. And then lastly, I want to mention Trustee Day at ILA. We have the ILA conference happening. That will be on Thursday, October 11th. It is at the Peoria Civic Center, so that is a 2-hour drive. It is a program designed to support library trustee education. And registration includes a full day of programming, breakfast, and a luncheon. And the day begins with a keynote address by parliamentarian Nancy Sylvester. She is great. There is an exhibit hall there to see the latest products and services, followed by the luncheon. Registration is $175, and then travel expenses. If you're interested, please email me and I can forward you the trustee reimbursement form. As you know, it's required under the Local Government Travel Expense Control Act. And if I have any completed forms, those will be included in the September board packet, and then the board can discuss those expenses then. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Tatiana. Other questions for the director?
Yeah, quick question. You mentioned that we're increasing our digital content. Could you expound upon that, please? How are you defining digital content?
We have 2 major platforms for digital content. So those include ebooks, e-audiobooks, and that would be Overdrive and Hoopla. Does that answer your question?
So are you getting more titles then? Are you
And
using it,
more titles and more duplicate
copies?
titles to satisfy holds on those titles.
When somebody clicks on recommending a title, I believe that the library gets notified that that title has
Not directly. It is when we are a part of a consortium, so there are some hoops to jump through to receive those recommendations, but we do receive them eventually. They come in a report, yes. And then we make determinations on, audio and digital titles are far more expensive than just regular books, so we have to make some choices there.
How much does an average audio title cost, if you don't mind?
Audio, I don't know. Digital books can be anywhere between $50 to $99. And it's not the same as if a individual outside of the library would purchase them, because we're part of a consortium, they sell to libraries differently because we rent them out, loan them out. So libraries pay a different fee than the average person in their home would pay.
And how does that compare to, say, adding a book on the shelf?
Books on the shelf can run anywhere between $20 to $30.
Okay, thanks.
Do you have any other?
Hardcover.
Right.
Yeah.
Any other questions for the director? All right, seeing none, we'll move along then to item 5, the assistant director's report. Councilmember McClellan.
Okay, Tatiana mentioned some events. So the event team met this past month several times, and the team actually began discussing our Star Wars Reads Day, which will be in October. And we're also, I guess Tatiana mentioned, we have Harry Potter Day, which will be in March. And so those dates are now going to be set, and we're working on the activities that will happen those days. It was fun to see the Summer Read wrap-up event come to life on that Saturday, July 28th, and the obstacle course was inflated by the setup crew and guided by the Lisle Library staff. That was all set before we opened at 9:30, and the course was some great advertising for our event. And again, I want to thank all the staff for the setup, for their time at the event, and also the cleanup. Sometimes we forget about scheduling staff for the cleanup. Summer lunches. That concluded this past Monday on the 6th, so we had hosted 9 lunches for children from Monday, June 11th through August 6th, and that was here in the meeting room. The summer meals program was designed to provide lunch for children during the summer, and this summer we hosted about 85 children. The Lisle Library staff thanked our volunteers, the West Suburban Community Pantry, and the Northern Illinois Food Bank for helping with this program. And actually on Monday, Kristen from the food bank came over to also thank the volunteers, and she said she'd be in contact with Tatiana and me to kind of just talk about the program and see how we can do that next year. Talking about the facility, we had Bear Landscaping and our tree workers save a tree here several times this past month to help with improvements. Bear repaired the water path with the rocks for the southeast corner of the parking lot, and this will help stop erosion in the landscaping that's back there and improve the water flow to the sewer. Our tree maintenance people were here several days for tree trimming and to remove a couple trees that had fallen over onto our Front Street neighbor's property. And it makes for, that whole trimming along Kingston and Front Street makes for a nicer pedestrian walking and access to the library. I have met with several elevator maintenance companies to receive information on replacement parts for the elevator. We're looking at a new controller, fixture panels, and electrical code upgrades is what we have been in discussion with these elevator maintenance companies. And Patriot Electric was here, and they're doing a couple ceiling emergency lights, and they're making some recommendations for surge protectors for the breaker boxes. And as you may know, we had a hailstorm on August 1st, which caused a tree to come down on the Kingston property next to the library for us. The facility monitors were able to do the cleanup of the debris that came down in the parking lot and the sidewalks and the sewer drain. And very nicely, the tree was removed by Save a Tree on August 2nd, the next day. That's it.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the assistant director?
Sorry. I believe, I'm just checking my notes. Did you say that our current elevator is like 31 years old?
Approximately, yes.
And it would be $70,000 approximately for a new elevator?
That's a verbal, what our current maintenance company estimated it to be, probably without the electrical upgrades.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked to 3 firms verbally, and to have a whole new elevator would be probably between 70 and 100.
I have a question. I noticed you had a meeting with the DuPage County Health Inspector. What was that in regards to?
The summer lunch.
That's right.
Yeah. They have to check.
They have to
They
check.
just came in like on one of the lunches?
They
pretty
take the
much?
temperature in our refrigerator.
Okay. Did we pass on this one?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Of course.
Okay. All right, any other questions for the assistant director? All right, then we'll move on to item 6 on the agenda, which is committee reports. 6A, finance.
Nothing to
Treasurer.
report.
6B, personnel policy.
Nothing to report?
All right, 6C, physical plan.
No meetings planned.
All right, 6D, strategic planning. We have our next meeting a week from tonight, correct?
Right, okay, so I will run through the dates so everybody is aware. Our next meeting is August 15th, 7 PM. Then we have a meeting scheduled for September 18th. I had asked folks to connect with me if October 19th could work, but I didn't hear back from everyone about the time. Can we do a 6 PM on that date since it's a Friday? Does that make sense? Okay, so October 19th, it seems like everybody can make. And then if we need it, we still have November 1st penciled in.
All right. Any questions on the strategic planning committee?
Just want to let you know, I cannot make the 15th. Just,
Got
no big deal. Just, yeah, August 15th
Right.
for the strategic plan.
6E is the review of the minutes committee. The committee has done its work. I'd like to thank Trustee Swistak for coming in and reviewing the minutes. And so I would like to retire that committee as of this meeting. Moving on.
Before we move on,
Certainly.
regarding the elevator repair, which I suppose we're going to vote on an allocation of funds.
Yep.
Well, if we do allocate the funds, would that involve bids?
No. Because in our policy manual, we can talk about it then or we can talk about it now. Would you
Well,
like-
I bring it up now because if it does, that's usually a role for the physical plan committee. The physical plan committee hosts the competitors and reads the bids and chooses the lowest one, all, et cetera, as part of it.
Right. When it's a matter of public safety, you do not have to go to bid.
I would like to, though. I think, I would like, and I've watched how the village board works, and they go to the planning and zoning committee or whatever you call it, and they act upon things having to do with planning and zoning. Based on whatever planning and zoning, they come back with a recommendation to the whole board, and then the board votes on it. So in terms of spending money on facilities, whether we put in a new one or whether we, make changes or have parts or whatever, I'd like to see the facility committee come with a recommendation to us.
Well, I've been in communication with the chair of the physical plan committee multiple times on this topic. And due to the fact that this elevator has been breaking down, it works and then it doesn't work. And when it doesn't work, people are stuck in the elevator and staff have to intervene and flip the switch in the circulation office to make it work. So it's an ongoing problem and it may just stop. So if we have to go through committee and go through bids, that's a multi-month process. We have to also publish in 4 newspapers twice to do that, and then receive the bids, and then bring it to the board to approve. Due to the fact that it is what I would call a public safety issue and pseudo-emergency, I think we need to move forward with this tonight.
And then we can continue talking about this when we bring it up in new business, if that's...
If
all
we
right.
could, please.
Okay. Item 7 is unfinished business. I don't believe the board has any unfinished business. Then we'll move to item 8, which is new business. Item 8A is the tentative budget and appropriation ordinance. So this is a tentative budget and appropriation ordinance that sets sums of money as may be deemed necessary to defray all necessary expenses and liabilities of the library district for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2018 and ending June 30th, 2019.
I move to approve the tentative B&A.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There is a motion and a second. Discussion.
Okay, we are doing things a little differently this year, so I would like to just walk through my notes, and then afterwards I'll answer some questions, just to provide continuity, if I could get the questions after I walk through the notes. So the B&A serves as our legal controlling device for expenditures. It provides a limit for spending beyond the working budget for this year's expenses. So So basically, it allows for the library to spend past the budgeted amount if costs or rates go up. So a good example of that would be, we budget a certain amount for utilities, gas, electric, water, and then this year, electricity rates exorbitantly go high. So this allows for those expenditures beyond our budgeted estimates. So this year's B&A is approximately $342,000 less than last year's B&A in total. And last year's difference between the budget and the B&A was about $618,000. This year's difference between the budget and the B&A is about $400,000. This also includes a placeholder amount of $155,000, and I will explain that in a moment. So I just want to remind everybody that the appropriation is not about anticipated expenses. That's the budgeted line. Those are our anticipated expenses. The appropriation is our legal limit of spending. And the B&A in full also does not commit us to expenditures either. I mean, we could come in under budget on every line this year. That could happen. So this year's B&A, like I mentioned, is a little different in that it has placeholder amounts of $155,000, and it also includes our .02 line of $150,000 that we anticipate spending this year. So why do we have both? I intend to simplify our 1920 levy in November by discontinuing the special tax levy for building and maintenance, that .02 fund. So today, we have to plan for where we can expend those monies in our corporate account lines because your levy cannot exceed your B&A lines. So expenses for building and maintenance will be paid for through our corporate fund in 1920. So we must hold those expenditures in the line in our corporate fund to be able to levy for those amounts in 1920. In this ordinance, we also show this year's .02 expenditures line, and we do plan on spending those funds, basically spending that fund out. So the goal is in November, our upcoming 1920 levy will no longer show a .02 fund line. Those expenses will be incorporated into our corporate fund. So we will still expend those funds, but through corporate. So how did we do this on paper? If you look at Ordinance 1805, we divided $155,000 three ways in our corporate fund. We placeholded those $155,000. We did that by dividing it three ways, like I mentioned, $65,000, $30,000, and $60,000. We did this under building costs using the maintenance and repairs line. I'm going to use a word that's not probably a word. We placeholded that $65,000 there. Under contractual services, we placeholded $30,000 there. And under equipment, using major equipment, we placeholded $60,000 there. Under building costs, that includes our HVAC, our trees, our plumbing, electrical, our parking lot, curb work. Under contractual, that's our IT expenses, like our outsourced OSG firm. Under equipment, major equipment, that's the physical IT equipment, such as servers, switches, PCs, laptops. So in sum, having essentially two levies, I believe, is a little confusing for the public. Most libraries also do not have a .02 fund any longer. Historically, it was a way to ensure that libraries had a special tax for just building and maintenance, basically keeping those doors open. And we can levy for this again if the board so wishes within a 3-year window. Otherwise, after 3 years, you have to go to referendum for that. But in my opinion, incorporating the spending into our corporate fund streamlines that whole levy process. And to do this, we have to do the awkward placeholding thing we're doing tonight to make sure that we allow for those expenditures in 1920. You'll also see in Ordinance 1805, in Section 5, it clearly states the intention to not levy for .02 in 1920. And there's also explanatory footnotes as provided by our attorney for clarity. And now I'll take questions.
All right, other questions in regards to Ordinance 1805?
I guess I'm looking for the B&A, which is the legal controlling device of our spending, to be no more than the budget. And I think it's about $400,000 more.
It is.
Okay. And I understand that you're saying part of that is because we're eliminating the .02. First of all, I don't know that there's really a benefit in eliminating the .02 just because other libraries do it. And for me, if you're adding certain amounts to certain columns, I think you should then be decreasing other line items by the same amount, which would make the B and A be no greater than the budget.
Well, the purpose of the B&A, Trustee Sullivan, being larger is, as the director said, to provide flexibility to the library in case one of the line items goes over. You know, the controlling document, as she said, is the budget. That is what we plan to spend, not necessarily what is appropriated in the B&A. In regards to the O2, you know, this year, whether we levy an O2 or we incorporate the levy in the corporate fund, the library gets the same amount of money. The question is, do you want to have 2 levies or do you want to have 1 levy? I believe it was the opinion of staff that it would be streamlined and be simpler and more easily understood for the public to incorporate that amount of money into the general levy. I don't know, not sure if I answered your specific question in regards to the O2.
There's been a lot of delayed maintenance in this building. There's been, for instance, how long has the elevator been malfunctioning? And how long has the air conditioning been malfunctioning? And to me, we're delaying maintenance anyway, so by getting rid of the .02, we don't even have a minimum that we're going to spend maintaining the building.
That's not true.
It's still appropriated or budgeted in the same amount. It's just instead of coming out from the O2 account, it's coming out from the corporate account. So we're upping the items that we spend the O2 money on in the corporate section of the budget. So we're not decreasing the amount of money that we're spending on equipment and maintenance in this B&A and going forward. It's just where the money is coming from.
And we're actually, we are spending, or budgeted 155 in the .022 spend this year and appropriating 220. So we have 155,000 to 220,000 to spend out of the .02, let alone other building cost line items like repairs and maintenance, which going forward, we're shifting that more for the tax levy than next year's B&A. So the money's there. It's what bucket it's coming out of, but actually
the money plus $400,000 is there. If you do a line item increase in one area, you should have a subsequent decrease. So, I don't understand if we're increasing some of the line items, like there's a difference, for instance, in employee cost salaries. Now, we pretty much know what our salaries will be. So why would you have to have a B&A higher than a budget? To me, those numbers, they should be the same because the message we're giving to the taxpayers and the constituents is that, well, we know we have a budget, but legally we can spend up to this extra amount. If we're going to go over budget, I think as a board member, part of our duty is to be aware of that and to make a conscious decision to go over budget. And we do have a $25,000 contingency. So, we already know that there's not going to be a line item called contingency, that we're going to automatically spend from. So I would say, let's have that $25,000 be available to the board to say, yes, we're going over budget in this area. The B&A is what we can spend, it equals the budget amount. So let's say we need to reallocate part of that $25,000.
I would say that the staff has gone over the budget, and as she mentioned, compared to years past, they've gone through and they've figured out certainly the line items where they are almost 100% sure that the budget item is going to be the budgeted item, and so that's where you see the budget and the appropriation amount be the same. But as I said before, the purpose of the B&A is to provide some flexibility to the library in case we do go over. And so that is why the appropriation amount is $400,000 more than the budget. As I said, we're not planning on spending that, but just in case, that is the way the ordinance is written.
And I understand that's the way we've always done it, is to have those two numbers be different. I'm just saying, let's stop doing it that way, and let's hold ourselves. I mean, this is our legal controlling device to spend money. If we're not going to stay within the budgeted amount, I think as trustees, we have an obligation to know about that and to make a conscious decision to spend more. For instance, we should know, we've already implemented, we've approved raises, we already know what month those either were effective in or are going to be effective in. So why are we padding, for instance, that line item by $24,000? That's a whole nother person. To me, I mean, we're playing games here. We're voting on one budget and then we're saying, oh, by the way, we might spend a total of $400,000 extra.
I wouldn't call this games, and if you look historically, we've been under budget in total year after year. We rarely go beyond budget lines, and if we do, it's very minimal. And again, this is just the ability in case there's increases in rates or costs for certain items.
And could some of the, like in the salaries, like a year or so, a year and a half ago, I guess now, there were a lot of retirements and some of them got like unused sick pay, I believe.
That's true.
And then, I mean, you might have to replace those people, and even if it's at the old salary or even less, depending what, you have like 5 people retire like we did. I think most of them got unused sick pay.
They did.
It's not the
It's-
sick
it's
pay,
not-
it's
it's
vacation.
Vacation pay.
Sorry,
yeah.
Sorry, unused
Benefits.
okay, unused vacation pay. So you gotta pay that out. And then you might have to replace that person even at a cost, or even if it's less, but the net could be above what you budgeted.
Has that
Or if you
ever
have to hire a
happened?
temporary, perhaps. I don't anticipate expending these amounts. I do not anticipate that. But we allow for that in case.
In other words, that's the whole point. You don't anticipate it, but that doesn't mean it can't happen.
Exactly.
As you said, the price of natural gas could spike, or.
And I'm
some of the-
okay with the natural
Mhm.
gas and the utility. And I see that there's extra money there, and I'm okay with that. I just think, you know, some of these other areas, they make no sense to me.
There you go.
You know, for me, yeah, there's certain items clearly I think we can project better than others, like very fairly stable, like salary and stuff. The others will be more difficult because maybe there's seasonality and rates and so forth. I agree, there's certain areas where clearly it can be a little bit tightened up, but there's other areas, like for example, if you look at the, these are more of on the revenue side, right? The gifts and per capita, those there's never in the budget, but we actually have it in the B&A and appropriation, but that's more on the revenue side, not on the expense side, correct? Right, so.
The per capita we just received, so we knew that
Yes,
number.
right. And I was just wondering, like for the $155,000 that you say you allocated to the 3 different buckets, is that reason why you chose those because you feel those are very likely to be overspent than what we have budgeted for?
No.
Or what's
The 105 that was shifted up,
Yeah.
we allocated them to existing lines
Right.
where we spend from. So we allocated it to.
The major equipment I see, and then the
Maintenance and
contract.
repairs, so that would be for building repairs,
Right.
HVAC, tree, plumbing, and then in contractual, that 30,000 is
Yeah,
for
right.
our OSG outsourced firm, that goes there, as well as
The major equipment
hours.
one.
And then major equipment would be the physical items, like purchasing servers, purchasing PCs, purchasing switches.
Printers.
Okay.
And again, that's a placeholder.
Yeah, for the tax levy, that will be,
Yes, because you cannot, because when you put forth your levy,
Mm-hmm.
your levy goes line by line, and each line, you cannot exceed your appropriation in the levy. So we have to show that and placehold that amount there. So in our levy, we'll have it in there, we will not have a .02 line any longer. So really, it's just, we're just shifting the 155 into corporate.
so the .02 will have a zero tax levy next year, and then that amount will go into the corporate.
So the allocation of a different distributed to the 3 different accounts that we would have covered under .02.
Yes,
That's your-
exactly.
your point,
And
yeah.
then going back to the .02, so the 155 is what's budgeted, and the 220 is the 155 budgeted plus the 65,000 approximately, like in reserves.
If
that
there's
year.
any funds, the reserve funds in the .02 fund.
Correct.
Yes.
Which I think was in that right around 65,000 at June 30th.
Yes.
So the goal is to spend that down.
Well, to complete
Correct, yeah,
spending from '02.
correct,
Yes.
yes.
Right, but it says the budget is 155,000 and the B&A is 220. So to me, I mean, that's not one of the 3 identified line items where you split up what was gonna be the .02. So, you know, to me, this is like credits and debits. I'm not sure why we're increasing it to that number. When we said in our budget, we were gonna spend 155,000 and now it's 220. I don't think it's worth making the B&A 220 just to say, and maybe I'm misunderstanding, but the purpose is to zero out the building maintenance fund.
Because there are surplus funds
Yes.
in the building.
There's reserves.
$65,000.
Yes.
And why, even though we're not levying for the .02, why do we have to, we already budgeted 155, why do we have to zero out and bump it up to 220?
Because we don't want to have a .02 fund.
So you clear
No,
out.
you're not levying into the .02, I understand that, but to me, to bump it up, you know, it's like you've got pocket of money A and you've got pocket of money B. Leave some in the .02 and spend it out next year. To
That
me-
could happen.
They could.
Right, but why do we need that extra 65,000 between the budget and the B&A?
Well, the funny thing is that our elevator may be 65,000, 60,000.
And because if there is stuff that we should spend it on out of the O2 fund, we need to appropriate to that amount to give us the authority to do that.
And-
If we don't, then we can't spend
Now,
that 65,000.
would the goal also be, because we want to spend on the .02 fund, would the goal be to, like, something you would put usually like in repairs and maintenance under the building costs and other contractual services and the major equipment, would you spend out of the .02 fund first before you hit those line items, or no?
Well, we're doing this .02 fund this year. And yes,
I know,
yeah,
but
we
what I'm
would
sa-
not, that's placeholder, we would not dip into that.
But what I'm saying is, okay, so we have, okay, just like, for example, repairs and maintenance, we have the 27,700 budgeted. Not, and then forget the appropriation
Right.
account for a second. So instead of spending out of this line item, the 27,700 number in repairs and maintenance,
No.
would you, you're not, okay.
No, because there's other things in that fund. I mean, that's why it's,
So it's not all,
yeah, it's not all
complete
.02.
overlap of
No,
plans. Okay,
no,
there you
yeah,
go.
there's other
All right.
things that come out of
but
there.
where you could spend out a .02 in that line item.
You could,
You
yes,
would try to spend
yes.
out of there first.
Yes.
So then repairs and maintenance line item for 27,700. has a, I don't want to put you on the spot, but has a decent chance of being under budget because you might spend it out of .02?
Perhaps.
Okay.
I mean, we're generally under budget.
Yeah.
And the other thing about budget is we budget what we, obviously you plan, it's a plan. But things like an extra tree coming down on Kingston would come out of '02, and it did. So things come up as well under maintenance and building that we appropriate for. I mean, we have appropriated for year after year after year. You allow for that.
Well, I'm going to drop it, but if the notes could reflect that Trustee Sullivan would like the B&A to be reduced by approximately $400,000 so that it's no more than the fiscally annual budget or annual fiscal budget. I'd appreciate that, and then I'll just drop it.
Well, so if we drop B&A, if we don't do that, the budget, that the document we get beforehand, that the budget is the budget, and that will be set when? We set.
We've already passed the budget.
I know, I understand that,
Mhm.
but that's it then. There's none of this in August and September.
No, you would have to, even if you
Correct.
modify, you would have to.
But I would assume then the discussion on the budget's going to be much longer, because this is what we go through.
Yes.
I haven't been on the board, 2 years. Both years, budget. We seem to go through a lot, the staff goes through a lot to prepare that. We have these numbers, and then 2 months later, we're right back here again. So now what happens if we discontinue the B&A and we only have the budget to work from?
You gotta pass this, this is
Have
a
to have
legal
B&A.
document.
I'm sorry?
This is the legal document that gives us the authority to spend the money.
The B&A.
The
Yes.
B&A.
You can't skip the
You
B&A.
can't
So-
skip the B&A.
So what are you saying then? Clarified, you say, I'm misunderstanding. You said you wanted to move this 155 to the corporate fund.
Instead of levying separately for the .02% fund.
That'll be
We'll just
okay.
take that money into the corporate account via the B&A.
But we still levy the B&A.
Yes.
This is
Oh,
the
no,
B&A.
we don't, the B&A is separate from the levy.
Okay.
Yes.
The B&A is our spending authority, the levy is our revenue authority, how we raise money. But they are connected, as Tatiana said, you can't levy more than
The appropriation
amount, which is why the 155,000 is,
in the corporate. It's a
Is it-
placeholder in the corporate.
And the levy was a lot lower than last year's, the one we passed a year ago.
The levy is a tax, the B&A is a plan for spending.
Yes.
You gotta have your plan of spending before you issue the tax.
Months ago, I just mentioned that we really don't need a budget if we would just work on the B&A. We could actually just pass it sooner, and that way we would save everybody a lot of angst, everybody a lot of work, and meeting time. And I'm not gonna beat a dead dog, but if the minutes could reflect that Trustee Sullivan next year would like us to look at doing the B&A and eliminate the working budget. And that's it. Because the budget's not a legal authority to spend, correct?
Budget has a whole lot more detail than the B&A, though. That's why
Yeah.
it's useful to have it.
Do them both together as one process.
any other comments from this side?
I think we're having a good discussion and I'm ready to vote.
We have
Margaret?
Sorry, I have a last question.
Okay.
So we now eliminate the .02 separate levy, but then we still subject to this average, like the balance, the .02, a 3-year average balance to be certain amount, right? Remember that we had?
The Miller analysis?
Yeah, the Miller analysis. This still subject, doesn't eliminate legal requirements, that we still maintain a balance of average, less than 3-year average, right? That was, the rule still applies, okay?
But we're gonna
We're
spend,
good.
yes, we're gonna
spending it down.
spend the B&A down, so that won't
Yeah.
be an issue.
I just want to make sure that
Okay.
we still have that requirement.
Any further discussion on the motion? All right, hearing none. Roll call, please, sir.
Lauren Wayne,
Aye.
Marjorie Bartelli,
Aye.
Richard Flint,
Aye.
Thomas Hummel,
Aye.
Liz Sullivan,
Nay.
Emily Swistak.
Aye.
By a vote of 5 to 1, the motion to approve the tentative B&A has passed. We will be back in September with a public hearing for the final B&A, and then the approval of the final B&A next month.
Just one question. Some years we have to postpone the September meeting to accommodate the 30-day window. Will that happen this year?
No, we're good.
So the September meeting will be the third Wednesday, not the second Wednesday.
What is
that
it? The 18th? What is it? The 18th.
The 18th, yeah.
Well, the 18th is our strategic planning.
Oh, I'm
committee
sorry.
meeting.
No,
Whatever.
that's...
It's the
Oh,
10th.
It's a time.
It's the 10th,
Yeah.
Ooh.
I believe it is a 10.
September 10th.
I thought we made our,
Isn't it?
counted our days.
Or is it September 12th? Wait,
I think it's the
12th.
September 12th.
It's the 12th.
The
Yeah,
12th.
and today's the 8th. We're good.
No, then
So
we're in
we got
October.
Oh,
20,
okay.
September.
You're good.
And that'll
September
be
12th,
35.
sorry.
Yeah, we're good.
I did the
35
math
days,
wrong.
yes.
So many numbers.
Huh?
So 35 days from
We're
today.
good, we're good.
You're good.
All right, item 8B is the approved Illinois Public Library Annual Report, the IPLAR.
I move to approve the IPLAR.
There is a motion, is there a second?
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Do you want to give a brief overview for the viewing public, for
Well-
those in attendance, about the IPLAR?
Well, it is a lot of statistics, and we're statutorily required to prepare the report, submit the report. It's done online, and then the board, by approving of this, we've satisfied the one piece where there's a review of the minutes by at least 2 trustees. So that's why we actually approve it at a board meeting. We don't have to do that, but we do that, and then by the approval, we kind of check the box that both trustees have audited our minutes. But there's a lot of statistics in there. Program statistics, staffing statistics, all kinds of things.
Is there any discussion on the motion?
So my question is, for the expenditures you have, the dollar amount, where does number come from? Is audited number from last year?
Last year audit.
Okay, just make sure. Thanks.
I'd like to thank the staff for doing this. People don't realize that this is a real job. Getting the data for the IPLAR is something else. There have been a few years where we've been in between directors or only had assistant directors or acting directors or whatever, and I got to see under the hood, and it's a real job. So thank you, staff, for getting this together.
And another comment I would like to make is, as we file with IPLAR, I'm wondering whether, we talked about benchmarking locally, it would be nice to see some interesting statistic locally, whether it's expenditure pattern or hours or programs and things like that. I think would be good, valuable for the board as reference.
And as Tatiana mentioned, I think the IPLAR is a condition for getting our state money. And so this will put us in line for another $30,000.
Maybe.
I have a quick question. On page 72, it says that we have, let's just call it 43 FTEs.
Last year.
Okay, last year. I couldn't find in here how many are full-time and how many are part-time. Do you happen to know that?
Not off the top of my head. It's about 50-50, but I don't know off the top of my head. I can get that back to you.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
No further discussion on the motion? All right, seeing none, roll call, please.
Marjorie Bartelli,
Aye.
Richard Flint,
Aye.
Thomas Hummel,
Aye.
Liz Sullivan,
Aye.
Emily Swistak,
Aye.
Lauren Wayne.
Aye.
All right, by vote of 6-0, we have approved the IPLAR. Item 8C, something we've touched on briefly already, which is the elevator repair.
I move to allocate funds not to exceed $60,000 to repair the elevator.
We have a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
There is a motion and a second. All right, discussion.
Okay, so as you know, we've had some elevator issues. We have employed our maintenance agreement with our current elevator company to help Band-Aid it throughout the few months. But as you know, it's 30 years old, and we've realized there's more that needs to be done using our current company. Originally, they mentioned, well, a new elevator could be, we could purchase a new elevator between $70,000 and possibly $100,000. So because of this extreme expense, Beth and I wanted to seek other quotes. So as of today, we only have some verbal estimates, and we are looking to replace some major parts. Now, before Beth had mentioned there are no more parts available, but we were talking about small component parts, not large pieces. And as I also mentioned, I've been in discussion with the physical plant chair about these issues, and they've been ongoing. So because it's a large amount, we wanted to bring it to the board. And because of our verbal exchanges with these firms, we believe that funds will not exceed $60,000. But we haven't received the paper quotes yet. I know Beth's got some more information about what actual components we're talking about, and some history about what's been already done to the elevator, because we have invested some funds in it already.
Before we go on, I have brought up issues having to do with the finance committee at this meeting, and one trustee told me, no, that's an issue that should be handled in the finance committee. Okay, and so we took it up, and I put it, in an email to Laundrie, who's the committee chair, and asked her to have a finance committee so we could talk about that. I would say that this is an issue that should be handled in the facility committee. And I know we've had elevator troubles for many months. And so I understand that right now it's an urgent situation. But to my mind, we could have been meeting as a facility committee. And again, I would expect before we spend $60,000 on parts or 70 to 100 on new, I would expect that the committee would come to the board with a recommendation. So,
Unless you want me to, or do you want
Let Beth, and then
Okay.
we can talk about that.
So currently, staff are assisting patrons by riding with the patrons in the elevator. We have had the elevator fail to open on the desired floor, and this requires staff intervention to reset the elevator by throwing a large switch in the elevator mechanical room. Now, for the past couple months, we've been taught, the elevator maintenance people, the one company that we use annually, has been here, and they thought that they could change out component parts in the controller and get it correctly working. That doesn't seem to be happening, and their advice and another company that's been here, they've examined the elevator components, and the technicians have determined that a solution is to replace the elevator controller with a new microprocessor controller. With this controller, we'll need new ADA fixture panels inside the cab and outside on the landings. The door operator will be checked. That's the device that opens the doors once you get to the floor. And there also may be electrical code upgrades. This is what we've been told by several of the elevator, installation people. We've been given this information verbally. Nothing has been in writing. And they've given us estimates between $50,000 and $60,000 to do those components that were mentioned, the controller and the electrical code and the fixtures both inside and out. So looking back to the late 2015 and early 2016, there was some work that was done on the elevator. This was the hydraulics and the cab door sensors. New door edges were replaced on both the front and back doors of the elevator, and this senses the presence of an obstruction and uses infrared beams, and that opens the door. Also, the starter contactor was replaced with a new control motor, or as it might be called, the hydraulics valve that operates the movement of the cab. So those things were done, those repairs were done in either late 2015, early 2016. We paid that bill, it looks like in around June, or excuse me, April or May of that year, of about $10,000 to complete that project. I think we paid like in thirds as they were doing the projects.
I'm sorry, how much was that?
Approximately $10,000.
And that was in 2015 and 2016?
Correct. So the hydraulics, the technicians that have looked at the hydraulics say that that's in good shape, that we wouldn't have to touch that. And then, again, these door sensors wouldn't be changed either. And that was a safety recommendation that comes from our elevator inspector. They come once a year to inspect the elevator. So when we're talking about the microprocessor controller, the example is if you're thinking about a new car, or excuse me, an old car, and you want to rebuild the engine and you can't find the parts. So instead you opt to put a whole new engine in the car. And that's approximately what the suggestion is for the replacement, or for the replacement of a new controller would solve, hopefully, the problems with the elevator.
And the reason it's on the agenda today is we're trying to expedite fixing this. And I spoke with the chair on this, so that's why it's here tonight.
And if all we needed is a chair, then that's all we should have. We shouldn't have committees. I mean, can you please reflect in the notes that Trustee Sullivan expressed a concern that any elevator expenditure should come from the facility committee and should also go out for RFP. And although it is an urgent situation today, this process could have been started many months ago because we were having elevator trouble many months ago.
And they were addressed many months ago, and we were expecting those issues to be resolved via the professionals we've hired. Obviously, that didn't happen.
It took longer than we thought.
Yeah.
So I mean, I know I was asking.
Not going to defend what I said. If you can just reflect it in the notes, I'd appreciate it.
Beth, do you have more?
No, that's,
Okay, Margie, can you let?
Okay.
Before I forget, I would like to add that I would like to see, since I am on the facility committee, I would like to see more meetings when merited. I think this issue merits a committee meeting. I understand you talked to the chair, that's great, but as Liz stated, there are more than just the chair on the committee. And I'd like to ask a question from Beth. So the microprocessor controller, that's like the engine as you described it. Let's just say down the road with our strategic planning, we decide to go completely new. You know, the infrastructure of the elevator, you know, the rails that I don't know the technology, but how it goes up and down, you know, the simple part. If we had to replace everything, we would still use these parts that we're replacing now, the microprocessor controller, the ADA panels, the electric code upgrades. So we wouldn't be replacing those again. I guess what I'm trying to say is, if we, and I realize we're not going to spend $60,000. We hope, we hope it's less. But if we did, and for whatever reason things aren't working out and we want to replace the entire elevator, and we heard the figure 70 to 100,000. Would that be minus the 60,000 we're allocating now? So we would be looking at 30 to 50?
it sounds like the controller is going to be new, so it could be used again if you wanted to replace the cab of the elevator. Now, the fixtures that we're putting into this cab, which is, you know, when you're at your landing from the outside where you push the buttons, and then there's a fixture inside to push the buttons. Now, I can't say those fixtures could go to a new cab.
Okay. I think those are the kind of questions that we might be able to solve in a committee meeting. This is no reflection on Beth whatsoever. I'd like the minutes to show that. I am not trying to say that. But had I known that this vote was coming up for up to 60,000, I might have been more adamant about the committee meeting, and I would have had an opportunity to discuss this with Beth in a committee meeting.
Jay, could I just make a friendly observation?
I still had the floor, I believe, but, okay,
Marjorie?
Richard, go ahead.
The allocation of the funds, and I'm told that this is considered an emergency situation, so the firm has already been picked. Okay. That's different than actually monitoring the work. We have two different issues here. So if Trustee Bartelli or Trustee Sullivan thinks this a committee meeting is called for, either one of them could just move to refer this issue to the Physical Plan Committee, and then we could have both. The allocation of the funds and a discussion of the issue with the firm.
I'd like to hear whoever the chairman of the.
Well, we haven't,
physical
you haven't
plan-
picked the firm yet.
No, we haven't
But
received
you-
paper
th-
quote.
That's what I mean, so
We can still have a meeting if you'd like.
I mean, do you guys want to have a meeting? It seems-
Well, to discuss these types of issues, and I think we can push it and do it right away if we're all available. If the
Well, it would
committee-
have to be.
I mean, I understand there's a public safety issue.
Correct.
I'd like to see this done as soon as
I
possible.
agree, and this has gone on longer than I think any of us expected, is
I
the
agree.
issue, so.
And that's
I mean,
why it's on the
hindsight 2020, had I known this 3-4 weeks, yes, we would have
I
probably.
understand. I'm not
So-
disputing that.
But,
So,
I mean, we could still have a committee meeting if you want, I just don't want to hold up the process, I mean,
And I agree.
yeah.
But I wonder if between now and, let's just say we had a committee meeting on Friday, just off the top of my head.
Well, maybe
I'm
it
not
can't be
saying.
till 8 or 10 tonight, Fridays, you have
Okay,
40.
but what I'm saying is, Beth, would you be able to get some of the questions?
Oh.
As far as going from this to brand new?
Just before.
Okay.
So probably the earliest we could have a committee meeting, since there's the 48-hour rule or law for, to post for a meeting, and it's already Wednesday, 10, would probably be like Monday afternoon sometime. Now, I don't know if staff could gather some of that.
I don't know if we'll have, I mean, you
That's
can
what
have
I'm
a
saying.
meeting, but I'm not sure we will have the quotes.
Well, I don't know about the quotes even so much, but the information, like some more information, more detail. Now, just to, I guess, clarify or summarize though, a lot of, I know you're talking about the new the comparison to a new elevator, but like Beth said, a lot of these, or some of these parts can be used. Basically, it's almost is a new elevator except for the cab, basically, correct?
Correct.
Well, then that answers my question.
So pretty much with all, and these are
I mean,
all new up-to-date parts.
Would you say that, Beth, what I asked you as far as? I'm not.
I'm not an elevator technician,
I
but, you know, I've learned a lot by talking to the people that have come. We still have one company that we've talked to, we've explained what we would like, and they're making arrangements to come. At this time, all the schools have to finish all their work to open, so every elevator company that we've talked to are tied up with the schools. So the third one has to come yet. They're, you know, when you talk to them over the phone, you can tell them what you're interested in, but they're not going to give you anything on paper until they see the
Right, so
elevator.
that's why it was a verbal.
And they have to see the mechanical room where the elevator hydraulics are and this controller. They want to see the fire panel. There's a lot of little components to it that they need to see.
Do we have any idea of a time frame that we're looking
For this group,
this project?
I think that early next week they're going to be here.
And then after that, what then staff would?
I think from our current maintenance company, I told them that we were meeting tonight, and they were trying to get us something by the end of the week. Now, whether that they hold to that, I can't say. Something on paper.
But we'd like to allocate the funds if we can get this done within a month. I wouldn't want to wait until next month. At least we could get the process started or get into the queue to get it going. And if you want a meeting, and again, I do want to say, I understand, I appreciate wanting to have the committee meetings to discuss this. I think that's what committees are for. But because this has gone on for so long with Band-Aiding it, and just recently we realized that instead of getting a whole new elevator, we could do this. That's why it's on the agenda tonight.
Beth, you mentioned that with the schools needing to have all of their elevators, whatever, passed, the certification and so on. Would anyone be even able to start working on this? Are they available to do this repair?
Yes, in 2 or 3 weeks, yes.
In 2 or 3 weeks.
Placing orders, I just
Okay.
like getting in the queue of getting orders placed.
So I think my perspective, whether it's we fixing it up or brand new elevator, I think we need to have a criteria what's most important for us. Serviceability is one thing, reliability and performance beyond just also cost. As you said, it's also a public safety issue, right? Mm-hmm. Another thing we need to consider is, as you said, can we reuse some of the parts if we decide it's got different infrastructure, different building. So I think these are something that I don't think we could do in a patchwork here and there and make a decision right now. And second thing, I'm not a professional. I know you guys are not, but you guys are professional librarians, so I would prefer a professional assessment of what our options are, whether it's, I understand there's some verbal quotes and so forth. So for me, if I feel comfortable, then that has to come from, I would prefer referred by the fiscal plan committee before I can make assessment on whether I should vote for this or not.
Well, we're voting to allocate the funds, and again, the elevator can completely break tomorrow. Completely break. And we would have to do something about that.
Then can we do this something that what is minimum we have to do in the short term, just keep it running? It's not going to be, maybe it's less than, $5,000 or $10,000, but it won't be $100,000. So therefore, if we want to make a $60,000 or $100,000 decision, I think we have to do some level of due diligence. And by verbally talking and not having somebody at a professional assessment of the options, I don't think it's prudent at this point.
Is that not something that the elevator companies have been doing as you speak?
Yes.
They've been talking to the elevator companies.
And they've been out, right?
They've been,
Yes,
they've come
we've had
here,
2
they've
out.
looked at it,
Yes.
and they've given their professional opinion to
Right.
staff.
They have, and they
Are you looking for something more than that?
Yeah, I feel if you have to make $100,000 decision, you have to have more than just verbally talking with the staff and have somebody. I just don't feel comfortable this time.
Can you explain the professional assessment? Who would that be?
Like how it's almost, that's I think probably what Liz kind of mentioned back then, this whole RFP process where they kind of understand what's our situation is, do assessment, and actually have something in writing, say, here are the minimum, what the options are, so here's the minimum you can do, here's a different option you have, whether it's a component or brand new elevator, and here is what our plan in terms of when we can start working on it based on the availability. So something with a little bit more complete information, because I think this is different than like we had issue with the hail damage or so forth. Those are truly kind of emergency. You have to address it right away. I understand that tomorrow you said the elevator could break. Then what is the minimum we can do to keep it running until there's a physical plant committee meeting a recommendation? Then I feel more comfortable with going through the committee, and the committee has recommendation, and then bring it to the board for a vote. Because to me, I'm not opposed to even have a brand new elevator, because as we talked before, we talked about so many times, have issues with parts availability and so forth. Then if we're gonna do, as you said, patchwork, they're gonna come back with another discussion 6 months or a year down the road again.
Well, that's what the professional verbal estimates were. It was to avoid doing patchwork anymore, that this was the minimum up to 60.
And then are these elevator companies going to submit written?
Yes.
Which is my understanding,
Yes.
that they've looked at the elevator, they've used
Provide a
their
scope of work.
professional expertise, and they are going to provide us written suggestions of this is how we should approve. But we don't know when we're going to get those written.
Well, we're
Could
hopeful
I-
in the next month.
Could I just suggest that allocating 60,000, up to 60,000, is not a commitment to spend 60,000. We haven't even selected a firm yet. So all we're being asked, I think, tonight, is to set aside $60,000, then find a firm, then discuss what needs to be done. If we need more than 60,000, we'll have to come back and ask the board to do that, and if it comes out less than 60,000, then we're in the black.
That was what I was thinking, Richard, was that if we could approve the 60,000, we're not gonna get the written quotes and suggested action for a while, that
For a
at
week
that
or
point, maybe the physical plant
Sure.
committee could meet and review the written
Sure.
materials.
Ask
that
their
we-
questions.
Ask
and-
their questions, and at that point, we've given them the authority. The physical plant committee then can review that and give it suggested course of action and something, then the staff
That
can move
is the
forward.
reason for the existence of the physical plant committee.
Mhm. With that.
Monitor ongoing projects.
To
So-
Audrey's point,
Mhm.
as far as a new elevator possibly being 100,000, my understanding from the budget discussion and the B&A, we have money available to do this. We need an elevator, and we can't move the elevator in this facility. Okay. Short of building a new facility, we're going to have the elevator right where it is. I'm just suggesting the possibility that the committee could discuss, why don't we just get a new elevator? I mean, if we're talking 60 to 100, let's just get it done and
But it could
do
also
it.
be 40 to 100. But
No, I
it's-
understand, but
it's fair.
that's the purpose of the committee meeting.
No, that's fine, and maybe that's what we could have staff do, is
So-
see if they get a quote on it.
So then I guess my next
Well, we,
item would be, do we have to vote on this then? Jay, I'm asking your opinion.
I believe so. We don't have to do anything.
No,
But
I
think the best
know
course of
that.
action, Marjorie, would be for the board to approve this, allowing us to expend the funds not to exceed $60,000, and then allow the physical plant committee, once the written
Bids.
proposals and bid proposals, whatever the correct legal term for their written materials is, to review that, raise the issue, quotes, thank you, written quotes, raise the issue, and then allow this.
So what is
To
the
the board.
benefit of this then? So you say not, I'm sorry.
The benefit is
Not to
then,
expend, and so give you authority to spend up to 60,
Yes.
but then you don't even know what directions you're going. So that means, so you have this vote, if you get the vote today, that means you can start to place a PO and start to pick vendors and start to spend, or are we,
my suggestion would be for the physical plant committee to meet and review and come to a conclusion, an agreement as to the best way forward. And I would be happy after that to allow staff to go forward upon physical plant's recommendation so that we can fix the elevator as fast.
So a,
Sorry.
so a physical plant committee recommendation would not have to get approved by the whole board? Is that what you're? is that
Well,
what
we would
you're-
just provide, that's the other thing, I mean, we just provide a recommendation, the board could go a completely
Right, well, that's
different
what I'm
way.
curious
so
about.
it would be in
because-
September? Is
So
that
it
what we're
wouldn't
saying?
be, so it'd still be another month out before we make any decision?
Well, I was gonna kind of ask for staff, do you think you'll have all the information by any chance by Monday?
By Monday?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
No, because
the
I
other
would say
company-
a good week,
The other
a
company's
good
not even
week.
coming out till next week.
Right.
Jay, you were asked if we have to do this tonight, if we have to do it this way. I wasn't asked, but you were, but I will just say the answer is yes, we have to do it this way. You were correct.
I don't understand that at all. Why do we have to vote on something that we're allocating 60,000 and if we go new, that's not enough. And if these RFPs come back and somebody's quoting 70,000, but they're including more, the recommendation might come that we should go with the 70,000. So to me, why don't we, I mean, we're putting the cart before the horse here. You decide what you want, you entertain, I think you had a really good question, Marjorie, about how much can be retained, what percentage of the expenditures can be retained if we go and later on switch it out. I mean, questions like that should be answered in committee before an RFP or even a request.
I think this amount and the reason Beth sought the answers she received in terms of replacing major components was because the board discussed replacing the elevator in whole. And I think there was some ambivalence about doing that, seeing as we're still in strategic planning talks and trying to save costs in case something was different with the building down the line. So instead of expending up to $100,000, we were looking at ways to repair and allow it to last, since we've already invested funds in it with the hydraulics. That's why that amount is there.
And I guess, I don't know how long we've been on this conversation, 20 minutes, 25. Again, I'll bring up that I think this discussion would be more appropriate in committee. I don't think the whole board needs to go through every nit and I think we should be able to see the facility committee's recommendation.
But technically, we don't get the 60,000, approved today, you still, if something emergency happened, you still have the authority to spend out of your maintenance and repair fund to get parts and get it fixed, keep it running, correct? Or no?
Sure. The reason it's on this agenda is because the board has asked that we place items above my spending limit on the agenda.
That is the key. It's not quite as simple as that. Not quite as simple as, well, if there's an emergency, you take it up. It's not quite that easy.
But to Longre's statement, if this motion did not pass tonight and we had an emergency situation, we draw the funds from somewhere else and get the elevator fixed.
I believe
After a vote, yes.
We would have to call a meeting.
I understand that.
Yes.
Because the spending limit is what, I'm sorry?
25.
25.
So you think
Oh, it's
if
20.
something happen, emergency happens, the repair cost will be more than Tatiana's, spending limit. What happened in the past when we repaired it was a lot more than, or we never had?
It hasn't been that much. That said it was 10,000.
Yeah, 10,000 was the
Under
most we
20.
ever spent.
Well, not the most, but I think we've had expenditures for like 15,000 here and there throughout the past, but below my limit.
So the hydraulics are fairly new. And then a lot of these, and all these parts will be the new, up-to-date, not like obsolete parts.
They're not used.
They're brand new, up-to-date, current parts. So truly, for the most part, the only thing that will be remaining on the existing elevator is the cab itself, correct? Everything else is fairly, hydraulics are somewhat new.
The rails are there. I'm not sure what the mechanics are called that sit below
Sure.
and above.
Sure. But that would be replaced or? But
If
those-
you were getting a
yeah.
new
You guys
Yeah.
handle this in
All right,
committee,
all right.
please.
Okay.
Well, we've talked around this issue a lot, and my feeling is that I'm in favor of approving this motion to expend funds not to exceed $60,000. We're not going to get the written quotes from the elevator companies for
Good week.
at least a week, because one of them's not coming out till the beginning of next week, which I would be in favor of having the physical plan committee meet, talk with staff over the best way to proceed. And then allowing them the ability to expend not to exceed $60,000. If they want to come back to the board in September for more or a different procedure, that's fine, but
So
that is
they're
my
not
opinion.
making a recommendation, which then we decide to fund. We're funding it and we have no idea, because they're not gonna bring it back to the board. They're gonna spend up to $60,000 and there's no board vote on it. I just wanna be clear.
Well, as originally was proposed, we were going to allow the funds not to exceed $60,000 to be expended by staff.
Right.
So, yes, that is correct.
And if we decide to go with the brand new elevator, which would probably be north of $60,000, we could come back either in September, I would hope by September, and say, we'll scrap that, it's gonna be 80 or 100,000. If that's the route we go.
All right. So the motion is to Approve funds to be expended on elevator repairs as a matter of public safety not to exceed $60,000. Roll call, please.
Richard Flint,
Aye.
Thomas Hummel,
Aye.
Liz Sullivan,
Nay.
Emily Swistek,
Aye.
Lori Wayne,
No.
Marjorie Bartelli,
No.
Jay Fisher.
President votes aye. Motion passes 4-3. Item 8D is the semi-annual review of executive session minutes, which we are required by state law to do every 6 months. We will need to go into executive session to do
I
that.
move to go into executive session, whatever the citation is, 5 ILCS
120-C21.
C21, for the semi-annual review of the executive session minutes, 6-month review of executive session minutes to release or remain closed.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are now going into oh, Beth, you had a,
Well, there's also the executive session.
we're gonna do those.
You're going to come
After
back
we come
and then
back.
go back in. Okay.
No, we'll just come back out and deal with D&E after we come back out.
So I think you have to change your motion then.
Because it's
The
both.
motion
It's
said
both D
minutes.
and E.
I think you have to say minutes and recordings.
Minutes and recordings.
Okay, if the board approves, I would like to amend my motion. Everything I said plus review of executive session recordings more than 18 months old to determine what to retain or destroy. Will the seconder,
Second.
okay, so the motion has been amended and the seconder has.
As agreed to the amendment, so on the amended motion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are now into executive session.
At 8:32.
It is 8:44 PM on August 8th. We have returned to open session after going into executive session under 5 ILCS 122C21 to discuss our semi-annual review of minutes. We are now on new business, item 8D, semi-annual review of executive session minutes, action required to release or remain closed.
I make a motion to release the February 14th, 2018 minutes and keep closed the January 10th, 2018, April 11th, 2018, and June 13th, 2018 minutes closed.
There is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All right, we'll have a roll call then.
Liz Sullivan,
I'm voting.
To
Approve the motion.
release the,
February 14th and keep.
Okay, so it's in,
The library will
Aye.
close in 15 minutes.
sorry, I
If you
got
wish to apply
confused.
for or to renew a library card, please do so now.
Emily Swistek,
Aye.
Lori Wayne,
Aye.
Marjorie Bartelli,
Aye.
Richard Flint,
Aye.
Thomas Hummel.
Aye.
motion passes 6-0. We will open the one and keep the other 3 closed. Item 8E is the review of executive session recordings more than 18 months old. Action required.
I move to destroy the tapes or recordings for the following dates: November 12th, 2014, December 10th, 2014, May 11th, 2016, September 14th, 2016, October 12th, 2016, and both of the recordings from November 9th, 2016.
There was a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There was a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Emily Swistek,
Aye.
Lori Wayne,
Aye.
Marjorie Bartelli,
Aye.
Richard Flint,
Aye.
Thomas Hummel,
Aye.
Liz Sullivan.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item 10 on the agenda is opportunity for trustee comments. We'll start this month with trustee Hummel.
I know we got the one nice email about youth services. I know that was nice to hear. That's pretty much it.
Trustee Sullivan.
Yes, this came from a conversation that I had with Tatiana. And so I kind of wanted everybody's opinion on this. There is a chart that came out in one of our documents that's probably a year or 2 old now that compares
employee costs per capita and overall library expenses per capita compared to other, like, local DuPage libraries. And so I guess what Tatiana said is, you know, if the board supports in general having her staff updated, that she was willing to do that. So I didn't know if people have feelings about whether they would like that updated. You know, what about you, Marjorie?
Well, could you say that again?
Yes, it'd be basically the charts that said the per capita expenditures of the library versus other surrounding DuPage libraries, and then the per capita employee costs per library compared to other surrounding libraries.
And the one that we currently have is from when? I believe is that 17?
Was it 2012?
No, I think it was
I don't know what we're
2012.
Oh,
referring
that's,
to.
it's that, oh, okay.
Well, the director has a question. I guess she and I are
Okay.
confused about the document of which you're speaking.
And I would like to also mention that the conversation you're referencing, I'd like to clarify that. I let Liz know if I was to be asked to perform work for the board, I want it to be of the board's wishes. So instead of just having one trustee ask me to do something and another trustee ask me to do something and another. So I would like the whole board to, whether it's what you're suggesting or anything outside of what I normally provide the board, I would like it to be a consensus opinion. So, again, I'm not sure exactly what
Is there a document? I know there was a document in the report from the consultants.
Yeah, it was the architectural
Right.
report from 2012.
It was 2012.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. But what in that report?
I guess I would like to see two charts. One which compares employee costs per capita compared to other surrounding DuPage libraries.
Would you be agreeable to providing that chart and doing, duplicating that information, only updating it? Or do you want to add, are you asking for more information or just?
No, I think just updating that chart, and had I thought about it, I would have made copies and handed it out. I apologize for that.
That
but-
old 2012 chart, everyone has that.
Yeah,
Okay.
right,
It's in the architectural
okay.
report.
So I guess I'm,
The issue I would have with that, Liz, is that wasn't our document. So I'm not sure how staff would update it since they didn't create the document in the first place.
I
I
have
mean,
already,
I'm not-
I've downloaded every single field that's available for every year, IPLAR. And I can recreate it from that. It's downloadable into a CSV file, which can be pulled into, you know, Excel or Google Sheets. So if they need the data, I can send them or load it up on a server. I've got the data. I mean, I could do the analysis too, but I know it would be preferred to come from library staff.
I don't have an issue with that. I'm just not sure how much work it would be for the staff because they didn't create the document in the first place. If it could be easily done without taking too much time, I would be happy
Yeah,
for
I
staff
think,
to do that. But otherwise, I don't want them
I think that's
toiling away trying to recreate that.
yeah, I think that's probably useful as a macro kind of data, reference data as we do strategic planning or annual goal review or things like that. But I think on an ongoing basis, for me, I think what would be more useful is remember that you guys always produce monthly statistics. And I would like to get a little trends or a little bit deeper dive on, you know, some causals, why this quarter is different than last quarter, what things drive the change. That would be, number one, you guys intimate know it, and also be very helpful. I think that would be something I would like to see.
I kind of agree with Wandra. I mean, it's something that's okay to look at as part of, I guess, what comes out of the strategic plan, but I agree. I'd rather see, like, drill down some of our data on our sheets. Like, I know I always like to see, like, or I always want to know, like, kind of what neighborhoods are the patrons coming from? Is there like one neighborhood that's not coming to the library, or is it fairly even throughout, or what? So I mean, I agree with Longbranch. I'd rather at first drill down on our data, and then I'm not opposed to what Liz is saying, but I think that should be, down the road.
Didn't you guys ask for two different things? She asked for the monthly statistics
Well, it is
on
it's
a
part,
drill down
It
basis.
is, yes.
But what you asked for, I believe I heard.
Well, there's two, yeah, I mean, I would agree with Longbranch on the monthly stuff, but also part of what's in the monthly stuff, like, are those the visitors, the people that come into the library as far as checking out books, are those 12,000 people, are those 12,000 individuals, or are those 3,000 people, checking out or coming 4 times? That's what something like that. I'm just looking for more data drilled down.
Jay, is this a conversation, or is this
Yeah.
each person taking 5 minutes?
No, that was Trustee Sullivan's 5 minutes. Trustee
No, I
Swift,
can have, I got my 5 minutes too, I'm good.
Oh, it's my turn?
Yeah.
I just wanted to commend staff on a successful summer read program, and the summer read wrap-up party was a lot of fun. My family was here pretty much the entire 3 hours. Some representatives of my family were here the whole time, enjoying it, being outside and then also coming inside and all of that. So I just wanted to commend the staff on a wonderful summer read and summer read wrap-up party. Thank you.
Trustee Wayne?
I'm good, thank you. I used up my 5 minutes.
Trustee Bartelli?
I agree. I don't have a problem with what Liz requested, and also what Longbranch and Tom are suggesting. And I also would like to ask the chairman of the facilities committee to set a date for our committee to meet as soon as possible.
I will talk
Thank
to
you.
the director at the conclusion of this meeting.
Thank you. Again, I just sort of like to echo what Emily said. My son and I came to the wrap-up party, and it was a lot of fun. And Will was doing a great job racing all the kids in the obstacle course. And then also, as Tom mentioned, the nice email that we got from the patron lauding Will for all the programs that he does up in youth services. So that's
I actually met with her.
Oh, yeah?
She came in, and she wanted that letter to go to the board, so I encouraged her to send it, because she just gave it to me in paper form. But she loves the library in full. Love Will, love John, and Miss Mary upstairs too. So
that's kind of, I'm up for my 5 minutes. I'll just one quick comment before we end is that I think things like this where the staff is doing a great job, do you guys have some sort of like spot bonus? How do you recognize employees who have been doing a good job?
it's during the evaluation period.
Okay. But don't do when he's off evaluation, I give them $25 Starbucks card, whatever it is. And I think it's probably good for morale.
We don't budget for that, but I do from my own personally with them.
Trustee Flynn?
I move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye, sorry.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.
It's been so long.